This is the Knitting with Anxiety and Stress podcast. Welcome to season 1, episode 2. You see, Sorley has joined us today. Yeah, he's not feeling well. Which is why I have this on and you are not seeing the mic. So it's been a week. We'll get to that in a little bit. First, this episode focuses on knitting the Melt the Ice hat. This thing is blowing up all over YouTube and the internet and physical and virtual sewing circles. We're going to talk a little bit about that and as we get into it. But to use, I have to look at my notes because of what happened with the cat. Oh, I did want to mention I'm currently filming these in Zoom. Camtasia just whited out my whole face for some reason. I don't know what's going on with their updates. And I tried Riverside FM, and that wasn't much better. It was giving big halos off of my glasses. So for now, these are going to be recorded in Zoom, and I figured out how to turn some of the settings off so the lighting wasn't really weird. Like before, I don't like the AI enhanced part of it. Anyway, so to use knitting as an anxiety and stress management tool, we begin this podcast a little bit differently than you might expect. This is intentional. We want to plan for success when we use this as a tool because failing to plan is planning to fail. So before starting any knitting, we need to wash our hands. This is a hard lesson that was learned by me at age 8 when my grandmother taught me how to knit. I did not listen to my grandmother. And if you want to hear the results of that, that is in episode 1, and the link to that's going to be in the description. Next, we're going to center ourselves with intention. This is particularly important if we've had a rough week, right? I am filming this podcast a day later than I intended because of Sorley. So because our mood goes from our body through our hands into whatever we're making or whatever we're teaching, it goes into our tone of voice. We give visual clues through our facial expressions and everything. It's very important to center ourselves before we start any knitting session, a new project, or even a class, right? So we're going to take a moment and do that right now. And I would place my right hand over my heart, but my cat is on my heart. So I'm going to put my hand on him. And we're going to take 4 breaths. Each one's going to be 4 counts in, hold for 4 counts, and 4 counts out. Okay? Okay. You don't have to close your eyes when you do it. I just felt like it was a stressful enough week that I needed to. Okay. So we need to remember that being organized before you start a knitting project is foundational. I have, and another thing, you need to make sure you're hydrated. I have a 40-ounce glass of water. I have my green tea over here, and I even have a bottle of fizzy water. So I'm set up for whatever I think might be tasty while I get going. Normally I do not hold the cat knit, but I do have a picture of me doing that before we figured out what his problem was, right? Anyway, in the last episode, I recommended that you do not have more than 2 projects going at a time. So why did I suddenly drop everything and do this melt the ice hat? Well, it's not because it was popular. Like many of you who want to be intentional with your knitting, right? And or your sewing. Maybe you want to do something that's going to last longer, or a thoughtful gift you can give, or you just want to replace your personal wardrobe with something that is better to your body, that doesn't have any polyester or acrylic in it. We're going to talk about that today too. But what I did, let me see if I can reach this with the cat on me. So I actually have my plastic bags and stuff, as well as the instructions page, the chart for the tam that I'm working on top of this, and you'll see why. He is not the only cat in our household. He is he's the older cat. The other one is not quite 2, and she's a Maine Coon Munchkin mix, and boy, is she rambunctious. So we got to make sure anything that looks like any kind of string is put up and away from her. Our vet says that, I'm going to set that on the floor for a minute. Our vet says like over half of what he does in his clinic is surgery on cats and dogs who've eaten some kind of string. Sewing thread, yarn, dental floss. Boy, make sure you bury that stuff, right? Anyway, I am holding 2 strands together for this. This is how far I have gotten. This is my second cast on of this. I did it exactly the way the pattern said at first. It was huge. It was really big. You absolutely need to do a swatch with this one. So I have one skein of this tomatoey looking color, and then I have, these are both fingering weight, and then I have another one here of this darker wine or burgundy red color that I'm holding together, and that's how I'm getting that color combination in there. If you have never cast on double pointed needles, these are bigger ones. It could be a good first project. And I prefer to do these over 3 needles and work the stitches with the 4th one. But they do come in sets of 5. And so you could actually make it be a square, and it would be a little less giving you that sense that some of the stitches might fall off. So one thing I do want to say is that I thought I had found the most lovely needles ever I had seen in my life, and I started knitting at age 5. They felt so good in my hands, calming and everything. They're made from birch, and they are only sold through Knit Picks. I cannot recommend these. I had to unsubscribe from everything Knit Picks because right after I got these, they got bought out by a hedge fund. My opinion is that a lot of what is wrong with our economy and just this mindset that corporations need to tell us how to live our lives and everything comes from hedge funds. So I also, because of my recent master's degree in global technology and development, it's gatekeeping on items so that it's harder for you to make things for yourself and not buy from corporations. But we're digressing a little bit there. Is this hat actually like what they wore in Norway to protest the Nazis? Yes and no. They did, it was the ones that they had was a little bit more of a Santa hat kind of elf thing that went down into a point and hung down farther down the back of the head. Those were really popular about, I want to say like about 25 years ago. There were a lot of kids that were wearing those to school and stuff. But because that was before I got my teaching degree when my kids were little. I didn't go back to school until they were all in school all day. Anyhow, this one's a little bit different, and I think it fits the current minimalist style and aesthetics that we're seeing in thoughtfully designed clothing collections, if that makes sense. When your clothing collection is meant to be minimalist and intentional, think more along the lines of Chanel type clothing. This goes with that very, very well. I got one row done on the Tama Brazilian, and I got nothing done on my cardigan. This one's actually, I got this off of eBay. It's 100% cotton. It's Ann Taylor. So at least the content, is intentional, right? I found a video done by a Norwegian guy who knits. Most of the knitwear designers globally are men, not women. And he was talking about how the video he had done 3 years ago on this hat had just suddenly blown up, and he was absolutely stunned. You really need to see it. And that the link to his video is in the it's going to be in the description, right? Because it's a story that deserves to be heard on its own. But if you're planning on doing a virtual or an in-person knit along or anything, you really do need to see it. And there was a commenter in the short that I did on this who thanked me for doing the short on the melt the ice hat. Why is it red? Right? We need to reclaim red. But it inspired her to go and find red yarn online and buy it. Almost all of the local knitting stores, I'm in the Seattle area, are pretty much sold out, which is why I just went ahead and reused what I had, because by the time I heard about it, they were pretty much wiped out in worsted weight and sport weight, which is kind of why I'm holding two fingering weight together to make almost a sport weight. So this is a restart. I want to point out again. So I've got about 1.5 inches um done here because I maybe got an inch done, realized it was way the heck too big and had to rip it all out and start over when I did it on circulars. And let me see my cheat sheet. What do we need to talk about? Um, Sorley had been acting for a couple of weeks. He's been in and out of the vets quite a bit. Like he had asthma. We've had a problem with really bad pollution and smog around here. And particularly the carbon monoxide levels have been insane. They've been between 4 and 500 almost every single day. It's not been raining. It's just really weird weather. And I've been having problems with that because of my asthma. So, sorry. Sorley was being treated for asthma. Can we turn around here so everybody can see your pretty face? Look at that pretty Ouija. Yeah, my sweet Norwegian forest cat. Um, I prefer Norwegian forest cats because they're generally very independent. And if you've had one, you would know what he is doing right now is not normal. Um, so he was on his asthma medication, and then we had to switch it to every other day. He just all of a sudden, just like his health just fell off a cliff. And they squeezed him in at the vets, and it looks like he had a heart attack in the middle of the night. He's a rescue cat. His other human died when he was right about the time he turned 7. He's almost 9 now. And that's how I came to get him. Um, and and they found out the shelter didn't tell me, but I had to take him to the emergency vet for a bladder infection because he's prone to them. And the emergency vet said that he had a heart murmur. So it looks like that was kind of a precursor to him having a heart attack. Poor kitty. And by the time we got him in, so he had that, let me think. Today's Saturday. He had that in the middle of the night, like Thursday night. So we got him into the vets about 2:30 yesterday. He was breathing so hard, just heaving like he could not get a breath. And the vet gave him, determined that it was his heart that was causing this. Gave him a shot of Lasix and then took the cat carrier and stuck it inside a bag and hooked him up to oxygen for an hour and told us, just, run home for a bit and come back. I cried all the way home because if that oxygen did not work, it was going to be really hit or miss when we came back if we would have gotten there in time before he expired. He was that bad. But it perked him right up, and he now has a LASIK prescription. You can tell this has really distressed me by how many ands I'm saying, because I am an English professor. I do not talk in run-on sentences normally. How how can we still do our knitting to calm our anxiety when our pets obviously need us like this? It's not easy, but the Melt the Ice Hat, I highly recommend it or something like it. I can't get that open. Um, because it gives you it gives you that little bit of calm and that little bit of you got something done. You know, it releases that mental anxiety in your brain where you feel like you're so hyper focused on something to have it come to a solution so life can calm down again. And it really really does help. Obviously, had Sorley not made it, I probably would not have done this episode this week. But here we are, and here he is, and his medicine's doing so well. He was able to eat this morning, and he's able to give himself a bath this afternoon. So we can all take a breath and just calm down. I had a couple of other things I was going to go over, but my brain feels like this is going on for too long already. So we're going to go ahead and kind of wrap it up. Just with that idea in mind, that even if you just do one row a day, that really does help with anxiety management. And if you have an emotional support pet like Sorley is for your anxiety, you can, I hope, understand the complete distress I was under yesterday that he might suddenly have to leave me. You know? Oh my gosh, he's hugging me. You sweetie boy. I love you. I just love you. You're so sweet. Yeah. So, in conclusion, we've covered 4 points in this podcast, which is what I usually do. That's on purpose, it's intentional. Life is lived by 4 circular points, the 4 cardinal directions, the 4 seasons. Even the academic year is in 4 sections. So, first, we covered, which I did in the first episode, also the importance of making sure your knitting stays clean, so that dirt doesn't get embedded in it. And next, we centered ourselves with intention so that anxiety and stress does not go into our project and eliminates the possibility of making a mistake and having to rip out. Really, nobody wants to have to do that. We discussed foundational organization from the start and why it might actually be a good idea to have a third project. I would not recommend having a third project just hanging around in case. Kind of go with your gut there, right? Really try to keep it to 2. But I have not had a chance to watch that video about how to do the add in the raglan sleeves on the cardigan. So functionally, I'm only working on the 2 hats right now. And then for point 4, we talked about how well organized knitting for anxiety management can help us when there ends up being some kind of crisis, like our pets have an emergency, right? Yeah. In the next podcast, in episode 3, we're going to look at my progress on the stuff I showed today, and hopefully some sort of progress. At least have watched the video on how to add the raglan sleeves in when you're knitting from the bottom up. I know how to do it on the top down. I've never done it bottom up before. We'll discuss why should you make knitting a practice of being more intentional in your life. When and how would you take your knitting to work? When would you do it in the classroom, right? There are times that you could do that. I might also talk a bit then about most teachers are introverts. They are not extroverts. So as an introvert, how could you use knitting to help in your classroom? And that's not to say that all introverts have anxiety issues. They don't. I don't think it makes them more prone to it. But we'll talk about how in the next episode what would that look like in practical application, right? We actually moved some of this to episode 3. I had planned to do it in this one, but it didn't get done because of the cat. So that is all for this week. Yeah, look at that, sweetie. Oh my goodness. Look at the sweet baby. Yeah. So I am going to go and figure out how I'm going to put up all the stuff while I'm holding the cat. And as usual, if you like this podcast, please consider subscribing so you get the notification when the next one is posted. I do aim for having them go live on Saturday morning around 11 a.m. Pacific. This week, obviously, as I said, that did not happen. And I look forward to reading your comments about not just your experiences knitting, but are you working on this melt the ice hat? It's insanely popular. They said, I'll put the link in the description again. I featured it a little bit in the short, but it's on Ravelry, the pattern. I'll put the link in the description for the pattern. And they, as of, I want to say like 3 or 4 days ago, they had sold 100,000 copies digitally of this pattern. When I say this is huge, I am not joking. It's really huge. So is there, because I have been knitting since I was 7, is there a technique or a specific knitting question you have that I could answer in another episode? Leave that in the comments. Feel free to ask away. I have knit quite a lot of very complicated things in the past, so I can kind of give you some advice on, if you're new to knitting, obviously work your way up. If you previously could do that and now you feel like you can't handle it at all, let me know in the comments because I'm working these techniques out. Some of them I had already worked out before I started this podcast, but other ones I'm figuring it out as I go. Have I made some improvement in managing my anxiety, and how does that look when it comes to my knitting, right? Anyway, I am gonna have to go figure out how to put this up while I'm holding a cat, and I will see you next week. Happy knitting.